The skies above Washington, D.C. darkened as the massive ships moved into position. It was not a storm or clouds that blocked the sun, but something mankind had never seen before. Frank Miller sat at his desk in the NASA monitoring station, his eyes fixed on the readings that flashed across his screen. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, forgotten the moment the strange signals began appearing. "Sir, you need to see this," Frank called to his supervisor. "The radiation signatures are unlike anything in our database." Before his supervisor could respond, the building shook. Outside the window, a craft unlike any human vessel hovered over the city. It was sleek but massive, with a surface that seemed to ripple like liquid metal despite its obvious solidity. Similar reports flooded in from around the world. New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo all reported the same phenomenon. Massive ships appearing without warning, positioning themselves over major population centers. Then came the message, broadcast on all frequencies, appearing on every screen in a voice that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the mind. "People of Earth, you are now under the protection and authority of the Tralaxian Empire. Resistance is both futile and unnecessary. Submit, and you will be permitted to continue your lives under our guidance." In the chaos that followed, few noticed the smaller ships, scout vessels, breaking away from the main fleet and descending to various locations around the globe. Diane Powell noticed. The former Army sergeant had moved to her grandfather's property in rural Montana after 3 tours overseas, seeking peace and quiet. What she got instead was a front-row seat to the end of the world as humanity knew it. She was chopping wood behind her cabin when the air pressure changed. Birds fell silent. Her dog, Rex, began to growl. Then she saw it, smaller than the massive ships on the news, but unmistakably alien. This craft was different, though. Where the invading fleet displayed the sleek, rippling metal construction, this ship bore markings and a design that seemed almost cobbled together. The vessel landed in the clearing beyond her property line. Diane's military training kicked in. She grabbed her shotgun from inside the cabin and approached with caution. Using the trees for cover, the ship's hull split open and a figure emerged. It walked upright on 2 legs but was clearly not human. Its skin had a bluish tint, with patterns that shifted like oil on water. 4 arms extended from its torso, and its head featured no visible mouth, only large, compound eyes that reflected Diane's approach in dozens of tiny mirrors. "Please," the creature said, though its lack of mouth made the method of communication unclear, "I mean no harm. I am Zexfil. I come to warn, to help." Before Diane could respond, a deafening roar filled the sky. One of the larger Tralaxian ships passed overhead, headed toward Great Falls, the nearest city of significant size. "They have begun," Zexfil said, a note of urgency in its voice. "We must hurry." Miles away, in cities across the world, the Tralaxian assault had indeed begun. Their targets were precise: military installations, power plants, communication hubs. They didn't target civilians directly, but human casualties mounted nonetheless. As infrastructure failed and panic spread, conventional weapons proved useless against the invaders. Missiles exploded harmlessly against invisible shields. Fighter jets were swatted from the sky by energy, weapons that seemed to bend and twist to find their targets regardless of evasive maneuvers. At the United Nations, an emergency security council meeting dissolved into chaos as reports of attacks flooded in from member nations. Only diplomat Alan Carter remained composed, his voice cutting through the panic. "We must respond as one planet, not as individual nations," he insisted. "This is not a time for old rivalries or territorial disputes. Either we stand together, or we fall together." His words carried weight, but implementation proved challenging as communication systems worldwide began to fail under Tralaxian attack back in Montana. Diane made a decision that would alter the course of human history. Rather than shooting the alien before her, she lowered her weapon. "You said you want to help. Prove it. What do you know about them?" Zexfil's eyes shifted patterns, something Diane would later learn indicated relief. "The Tralaxian Empire spans many star systems. They conquer, they extract resources, they move on. They believe themselves superior to all other life. I am not of their kind, but from a world they conquered generations ago. Some of us have worked against them from within, waiting for an opportunity. A distant explosion rocked the horizon, followed by a plume of smoke rising from the direction of Great Falls. We need to get you to someone who can use what you know, Diane said. My truck is around front. Can you doll you fit? The journey to the nearest military installation was fraught with danger. Twice they had to divert as Tralaxian scout ships passed overhead. Roads were clogged with panicked civilians fleeing the cities. It took hours to reach Fort Harrison, and when they arrived, they found it under attack. The base's defenses were holding, but barely. Diane's military ID got them through a side entrance where she knew the guards. The sight of Zexfil caused a momentary panic until Diane explained their situation. He's a defector, has information about the invaders. Get us to whoever's in charge. They were taken to Colonel Patrice Johnson, who had just received word that similar alien vessels had begun landing ground forces. Her expression was grim but determined. You say you have information that can help us? She asked Zexfil directly. Your weapons cannot penetrate their shields because they operate on principles your science has not yet discovered, Zexfil explained. But the Tralaxians themselves have vulnerabilities. Their neural systems are highly sensitive to certain electromagnetic frequencies. On our world, we were developing a weapon to exploit this when our research facility was destroyed. Colonel. Johnson leaned forward. Can you help us recreate this research? With your scientists, yes, but we will need time. Time is something we're short on, Johnson replied. As another explosion rocked the base across the country, Frank Miller had reached a similar conclusion through his analysis of the alien signals. The Tralaxian communication systems operated on unusual frequencies that seemed to cause unexpected interference with certain Earth technologies. He noticed that near specific radar installations, Tralaxian scout ships seemed to alter their flight paths as if experiencing discomfort. He compiled his findings and tried to send them up the chain of command, but with communications disrupted, his messages went nowhere. Taking initiative, he downloaded his data onto a portable drive and left the relative safety of the NASA facility. If the government couldn't come to his information, he would bring his information to what remained of the government. As night fell on the first day of the invasion, humanity found itself on the defensive everywhere. Military forces around the world reported the same findings. Conventional weapons were ineffective against Tralaxian technology. Cities went dark as power grids failed. The initial shock was beginning to wear off, replaced by the grim reality of what appeared to be an unwinnable war, yet in a handful of locations. A Montana military base where an alien defector shared crucial information, a makeshift lab where a NASA analyst studied unusual frequency patterns, emergency government bunkers where leaders like Alan Carter worked to coordinate a unified human response. The seeds of resistance were taking root. The Tralaxians expected an easy conquest, another primitive world to add to their empire. They didn't understand that humans, when pushed to the brink, were capable of adaptation unlike anything they had encountered before. As the first day of the invasion ended, humanity was bloodied but unbroken. And unknown to the invaders, their greatest vulnerability was already being discovered. 2 weeks after the Tralaxians arrived, Earth was a changed planet. Major cities lay in partial ruins, their skylines now dominated by alien structures that rose like metallic spines from the ground. Military forces worldwide had been pushed back, regrouping in remote areas where they could avoid detection from the advanced scanning technology of the invaders. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, a secret facility became the center of human resistance. Dr. Samantha Russo had been developing experimental energy weapons when the invasion began. Now, her underground lab housed something far more valuable than any prototype, the alien defector. Zexthal and a small team of scientists working around the clock to understand Tralaxian technology. Their neural systems evolved on a world with a much weaker magnetic field than Earth, Zexthal explained, pointing to a diagram he had helped create. It made them sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies in ways your species cannot perceive. Dr. Russo nodded, her tired eyes lighting up with understanding. Like how some animals can sense earthquakes before they happen. It's a survival mechanism for them. Yes, but it can become a weakness, Zexthel continued. The right frequency, amplified enough, would be like an unbearable noise to them, but worse, affecting their entire nervous system. In another section of the facility, Frank Miller had finally arrived after a harrowing journey across the country. His data on Tralaxian communication signals provided crucial confirmation of Zexthel's claims. When combined with radar interference patterns he had observed, they had the beginnings of a formula, a specific frequency that disrupted Tralaxian neural function. We need to test it, Dr. Russo insisted during a briefing with military leaders. But we need a live subject. Commander George Bennett, who had escaped the fall of a naval base in Virginia, shook his head. We can barely get close to their patrols without being detected. Capturing one alive would be nearly impossible. What about their technology? Frank suggested. Their ships, their weapons, they must interface directly with their neural systems. If we could recover even a small piece of equipment. Commander Bennett considered this. We have reports of a scout ship that crashed in the Appalachians 3 days ago. The area is heavily patrolled now, but if we move quickly with a small team. The mission was approved within the hour. Commander Bennett selected 4 soldiers with Special Forces training. They would slip in, recover what they could from the crash site, and return without engaging the enemy if possible, while the recovery team prepared. Up in orbit, astronaut Kelly Martinez watched Earth from the International Space Station. She and 2 other crew members had been stranded when the invasion began, their scheduled return shuttle destroyed in the first wave of attacks. Now they used the station's instruments to observe Tralaxian fleet movements, transmitting data, during brief windows when they could avoid detection. Their main vessels maintain a specific formation, Kelly noted in her log. 5 ships always form a pentagon pattern, with communication signals bouncing between them in a predictable sequence. If one pattern is disrupted, another forms immediately. It's like watching a living organism heal itself. This observation would prove vital in the days to come, but for now, Kelly could only watch and record, conserving the station's dwindling supplies and hoping her information reached someone who could use it. On the ground, Tralaxian forces had established extraction operations in resource-rich areas. They showed particular interest in rare earth minerals and water, setting up processing facilities that worked with frightening efficiency. Human prisoners were taken to work camps near these facilities, though strangely, the aliens made no attempt to communicate with their captives beyond simple work instructions. In occupied Chicago, these work camps became the focus of the first organized human resistance. Small groups began sabotaging equipment, creating distractions that allowed prisoners to escape, and gathering intelligence on Tralaxian patrol patterns. They discovered that the aliens operated on strict timetables. Their movements predictable once you understood their system. Meanwhile, Commander Bennett's recovery team reached the crashed scout ship. They found it partially intact, with Tralaxian patrols searching the surrounding forest. Moving silently through the trees, they managed to reach the vessel during a gap in the alien search pattern. We have 10 minutes at most, the team leader whispered. Take only what we can carry and identify later. They salvaged several devices from the ship's control center, including what appeared to be a neural interface headset. As they prepared to withdraw, a Tralaxian patrol returned unexpectedly. The team scattered, drawing the aliens away from their escape route. One soldier didn't make it back, sacrificing himself to ensure the others could escape with their precious cargo. Back at the Colorado facility, Dr. Russo and her team worked feverishly to understand the recovered technology. The neural interface proved to be exactly what they needed, a direct link to Tralaxian biology. When they applied specific electromagnetic pulses to the device, parts of it shut down completely. Other frequencies caused erratic behavior in its systems. This could work, Dr. Russo told the facility commander. We can create a device that emits these frequencies. A disruptor that would incapacitate their neural systems without harming humans. How close would you need to be? The commander asked. That's the problem. Our prototype has limited range, maybe 100 yards at most, and we'd need massive power to extend it further. Frank Miller, who had been studying the power requirements, spoke up. What if we didn't need to extend it? What if we could broadcast it simultaneously from thousands of locations? The power grid, Dr. Russo realized. If we could convert power stations to emit this frequency through existing electrical infrastructure and communication networks, Frank added. Cell towers, satellite dishes, radio transmitters, they could all be modified to amplify and broadcast the frequency. The idea spread through the resistance network. Engineers were contacted, plans developed. But implementation would require global coordination in a world where communication systems were compromised, and travel was dangerous. In another part of the world. Tech specialist Raj Patel worked with American consultant Lavra Fisher in Mumbai, one of the few major cities where resistance had maintained a functioning digital network. They had managed to hack into the lower levels of Tralaxian communication systems, creating a heavily encrypted channel that the aliens hadn't detected. We can use their own network against them, Raj explained to resistance leaders. Brief messages, transmitted during their regular communication bursts, would be hidden in their data streams. This breakthrough provided the coordination tool the resistance desperately needed. Through this hidden channel, information about the Neural Disruptor project spread to resistance cells worldwide. Engineers and scientists in different regions began working on the components they would need to convert local infrastructure. The Tralaxian leadership, meanwhile, remained confident in their conquest. Grand Marshal Vexcon, Supreme Commander of the invasion force, had conquered 17 worlds before Earth. None had offered effective resistance once their conventional military forces were defeated. He expected Earth's scattered resistance to fade as humans accepted their new reality. This species lacks unity, he reported to the Tralaxian High Command. They fight among themselves even as we take their world. Resource extraction proceeds on schedule. Full pacification expected within one planetary cycle. Had Vexcon understood human history better, he might have recognized his error. Throughout their existence, humans had demonstrated one consistent trait: they adapted. When faced with overwhelming odds, they innovated. When conventional tactics failed, they found unconventional solutions. As the first month of occupation ended, Dr. Russo's team completed the prototype of what they called the Harmony Disruptor, a device that emitted precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses targeting Tralaxian neural pathways. Initial tests on the recovered alien technology showed the device could completely shut down Tralaxian systems at close range. The resistance now had a weapon. What they needed was a plan to use it on a global scale, turning the entire planet into a battlefield where every power line, every radio tower, every electrical system became a weapon against the invaders. The greatest challenge humanity had ever faced would require the greatest cooperation in human history. 3 months after the invasion began, humanity had settled into a grim routine of survival and resistance. In the underground facility in Colorado, Dr. Samantha Russo watched as her team conducted the final test of the Harmony Disruptor prototype. The device, roughly the size of a microwave oven, hummed with power as they activated it. On the other side of the reinforced glass, the recovered Tralaxian equipment shuddered, sparked, and went dead. "It works," Dr. Russo said, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "The frequency completely disrupts their neural interfaces." Peter Johnson, the lead engineer on the project, nodded, but his expression remained serious. "At this range, with this much power, the challenge is scale. We need to hit every Tralaxian on the planet simultaneously, or they'll adapt." Peter had been an energy systems designer before the invasion. Now, he studied maps of power grids and communication networks spread across the table. If we could convert major power plants to emit this frequency, using the electrical grid itself as a conductor. "How many would we need?" Commander Bennett asked. "Hundreds, globally," Peter replied. And we'd need to modify cell towers, radio transmitters, anything that can broadcast electromagnetic signals. It would require coordination on a scale we've never attempted. Frank Miller, who had been working with Zexthal to refine the disruptor frequency, spoke up. We've identified 12 different variations of the base frequency. Each affects Tralaxian neural systems slightly differently. Some cause pain, others confusion. The strongest can render them unconscious or even kill. We're not looking for a massacre, Dr. Russo reminded them. Just enough disruption to even the playing field. Commander Bennett studied the global map. We need to get this information to resistance cells worldwide. They'll need time to prepare the local infrastructure. Communication remained the greatest challenge. The encrypted channel Raj Patel and Lavra Fisher had established through the Tralaxian network could transmit data but was limited in bandwidth. They had to break down the disruptor plans into small packets, sending them in bursts that wouldn't trigger Tralaxian security protocols. In occupied Chicago, schoolteacher Olivia Wright had become an unlikely resistance leader. Her knowledge of the city's infrastructure made her valuable to the movement. When the disruptor plans arrived through the hidden channel, she immediately recognized their potential. The city power plant is heavily guarded, she told her resistance cell, but we have people working inside. They can make the modifications gradually, hiding them within routine maintenance. Similar conversations happened in resistance cells across the globe. In Sydney, former electrical engineers worked to understand how to convert Australia's power grid. In Berlin, radio technicians developed methods to modify broadcast towers. In Cairo, university students created makeshift disruptors that could be hidden in everyday devices. The plan gradually took shape. Operation Turning Point. It would begin with conventional attacks to draw Tralaxian forces into engagement, spreading them thin across the globe. Then, at a precisely coordinated moment, power plants worldwide would activate the disruptor frequency. Amplified through every electrical system and broadcast device humanity could control. The challenge was synchronization. With conventional communication systems compromised, the resistance needed a reliable trigger mechanism. The solution came from an unexpected source, Kelly Martinez and her fellow astronauts on the International Space Station. We can use the emergency broadcast system designed for natural disasters, Kelly explained over the secure channel during a brief transmission window. It has independent power and can reach most of the planet with a simple signal. When the time comes, we'll send the activation code. Preparations accelerated. Peter Johnson worked with teams around the world to design conversion modules that could be installed in power plants and broadcast facilities. These needed to be small enough to smuggle past Tralaxian patrols, but powerful enough to handle the energy requirements of the disruptor frequency. We'll only get one chance, Peter warned during a planning session. Once the disruptors activate, the Tralaxians will realize what we're doing. Any facility that isn't ready when the signal comes will be useless. The Resistance set a deadline: 90 days to prepare every major power facility and communication hub they could access. It would require infiltrating occupied territories, smuggling equipment, and training operators, all while maintaining absolute secrecy. Commander Bennett coordinated the military side of the operation. Conventional forces would need to strike simultaneously around the globe, creating a diversion that would force the Tralaxians to deploy their troops away from key infrastructure. We don't need to win those battles, he explained to Resistance military leaders. We just need to keep the Tralaxians occupied long enough for the disruptors to do their work. As preparations continued, Grand Marshal Vexcon grew increasingly frustrated with the human resistance. Unlike other conquered species, humans refused to accept their defeat. Small attacks continued, resources went missing, and Tralaxian patrols occasionally disappeared without explanation. Increase security at all extraction sites, Vexcon ordered his commanders. Double patrols in resistant sectors. Any human found interfering with our operations is to be publicly executed as an example. The crackdown made the resistance work more dangerous but did not stop it. In some ways, it helped by concentrating Tralaxian forces around their most valuable sites. They left other areas with minimal coverage. Creating corridors through which the resistance could move people and equipment, Zexthel provided crucial insights into Galaxian patrol patterns and security protocols. They think mechanically, he explained. They follow the same routines, check the same locations. If you understand their pattern, you can move between their blind spots. 60 days into the preparation phase, a major setback occurred. A resistance cell in Madrid was discovered while installing disruptor components in a power substation. The Tralaxians captured the equipment and several resistance members. The entire operation hung in the balance. If the aliens discovered the purpose of the components, they might develop countermeasures. Dr. Russo and her team worked frantically to modify the disruptor frequency. We need a backup plan, she insisted. If they adapt to our primary frequency, we need alternatives ready. The captured resistance members in Madrid revealed nothing despite interrogation. The Tralaxians eventually determined the components were meant to disrupt their communications, not their neural systems, a critical misunderstanding that gave the resistance the time they needed. As the operation date approached, Peter Johnson traveled between hidden resistance bases, checking on the installation progress. The journey was perilous, requiring him to move through occupied territories with forged identification papers. In Detroit, he narrowly escaped a Tralaxian patrol. In Atlanta, he spent 3 days hiding in a basement while aliens searched the neighborhood building by building. Finally, after months of preparation, the global network was ready. Power plants and broadcast facilities across 6 continents had been modified to emit the disruptor frequency. Resistance fighters were in position for the diversionary attacks. In orbit, Kelly Martinez prepared the activation signal that would trigger the global response. Olivia Wright gathered her resistance cell in the basement of an abandoned school in Chicago. Tomorrow, we take back our planet, she told them. Every person has their assignment. When the signal comes, we move immediately. The Tralaxians won't know what hit them. Similar meetings happened in hiding places around the world. Humanity prepared for its most coordinated effort in history. There would be no second chance. Either Operation Turning Point succeeded, or Earth would remain under Tralaxian control for generations. That night, as resistance members tried to sleep, before the coming battle, Dr. Russo made a final check of the main disruptor facility. She found Frank Miller still working, making minute adjustments to the frequency calibration. Will it work? She asked him quietly. Frank looked up, his eyes tired but determined. It has to, he replied. We've put everything into this plan. Tomorrow we find out if humanity deserves its freedom. In orbit, Kelly Martinez watched the Earth turn below her. The lights of human cities now dimmed under Tralaxian occupation. She prepared the signal that would trigger humanity's response. In 12 hours, the fate of the planet would be decided. Dawn broke over a world poised on the edge of change. In hiding places, bunkers, and safe houses across the globe, resistance fighters prepared for the most coordinated human effort in history. Operation Turning Point would begin in exactly 3 hours. In the Colorado facility, Commander Bennett briefed the military units under his command. Your job is not to win, he reminded them. Your job is to keep the Tralaxians occupied and away from power facilities. The disruptors will do the real work. Across the ocean in occupied London, resistance cells moved into position near Tralaxian patrol routes. In the Amazon, guerrilla fighters prepared ambush points along alien supply lines. From the Arctic to the Sahara, humans readied themselves for what might be their last stand or their first victory on the International Space Station. Kelly Martinez made final checks on the broadcast system. The signal would be simple, a burst transmission on an emergency frequency that would reach receivers hidden in resistance-controlled facilities worldwide. Those receivers would trigger the disruptor activation sequence. All systems ready? She reported to her crewmates. Transmission set for exactly 900 Universal Time. The plan relied on precise timing. The military diversions would begin 30 minutes before the disruptor activation, drawing Tralaxian forces into engagement and away from critical infrastructure. Once the disruptors activated, Resistance fighters would target disoriented aliens and secure key positions. In Chicago, Olivia Wright led her team toward the city power plant. They carried small arms and wore utility worker uniforms stolen months earlier. Their job was to ensure the facility's disruptor remained operational during the attack. "Remember, once this starts, the Tralaxians will figure out what we're doing," she warned her team. "We hold this position no matter what." As 0 hour approached, Grand Marshal Vexcon received reports of unusual human movement in several sectors. Accustomed to dealing with rebellious species, he ordered increased patrols but did not elevate to full alert status. The scattered humans could not possibly coordinate a meaningful threat to his forces. It was the critical miscalculation the Resistance had counted on. At 0830 Universal Time, the diversionary attacks began. In New York, Resistance fighters struck a Tralaxian processing center. In Beijing, explosive charges detonated near alien patrol routes. In Cairo, snipers targeted Tralaxian command units from hidden positions. The attacks were not random. Each was carefully planned to draw Tralaxian forces away from power facilities and communication hubs. The aliens responded predictably, deploying reserve units to crush what they perceived as desperate, uncoordinated assaults. Commander Bennett monitored the reports from his command center. "They're taking the bait," he told Dr. Russo and Peter Johnson. "All major Tralaxian forces are moving to engagement points." At precisely 0900 Universal Time, Kelly Martinez pressed the transmission button. "Signal away," she reported, watching the confirmation lights flash across her console. "God help us all." The signal reached Earth in milliseconds, triggering receivers hidden in power plants, broadcast facilities, and modified electrical infrastructure worldwide. The effect was not immediately visible. The disruptor frequency operated beyond human perception. For the Tralaxians, however, the effect was immediate and devastating. Their neural systems, evolved to sense subtle electromagnetic changes, were suddenly bombarded with precisely calibrated frequencies that disrupted their ability to process information. In Chicago, Olivia Wright watched from the power plant control room as Tralaxian guards outside suddenly staggered, their movements becoming erratic. Some dropped their weapons, clutching at their heads. Others fell to the ground, completely incapacitated. Similar scenes played out worldwide. The effect varied depending on proximity to disruptor sources and the specific frequency calibrations used in different regions. Near major power plants, Tralaxians collapsed completely. In areas with weaker coverage, they experienced disorientation and confusion, giving human forces tactical advantages on the front lines. Marine Captain Jack Wilson led his unit through suddenly vulnerable alien defenses. "They're down," he reported over the Resistance communication channel, moving to secure the command post. The Tralaxian command structure fell into chaos. Their neural-linked communication systems, normally instantaneous and precise, became garbled and unreliable under the disruptor effect. Orders contradicted each other or failed to reach their destinations entirely. Grand Marshal Vexcon, in his command ship high above Earth, experienced the disruptor effect firsthand. The frequency was weaker at his altitude, but still powerful, enough to cause discomfort and confusion. For the first time in his long military career, he faced an enemy that had turned his own biology against him. "Shut down all neural interfaces," he ordered through the pain. "Switch to mechanical systems only." But the order came too late. Throughout the Tralaxian fleet, crews struggled to function as the disruptor effect intensified. Ships lost formation, some drifting into each other's paths. Ground forces, cut off from command guidance, either retreated to defensive positions or surrendered to advancing human units. In orbit, Kelly Martinez had been monitoring Tralaxian fleet movements when she noticed something unexpected. The command ship was moving lower in orbit, its trajectory becoming erratic as the crew struggled under the disruptor effect. "They're vulnerable," she told her crewmates. "If we could get aboard that ship... It was a desperate plan, but with the Tralaxians disoriented, it might work. Using the station's small maintenance shuttle, which Kelly had secretly modified during her extended stay, She and one crewmate detached from the ISS and set course for the Tralaxian command vessel. The approach was tense. The alien ship's automated defense systems remained partially functional, firing warning shots as the small shuttle approached. Kelly's piloting skills were pushed to their limits as she navigated through the defensive fire. Their docking protocols are still active, she observed, noticing the ship's entry ports cycling open and closed erratically. We can get in through the maintenance bay. On the ground, the battle turned decisively in humanity's favor. Resistance. Fighters secured key infrastructure points, ensuring the disruptors continued operating at full power. Military units pushed Tralaxian forces back from major population centers. In the Colorado facility, Dr. Russo and her team monitored the disruptor network. Coverage at 94% globally, she reported. The effect is holding steady. Peter Johnson studied the incoming data with concern. Some areas are showing fluctuations. The Tralaxians are trying to adapt. We need to rotate through the frequency variations to stay ahead of them. They implemented the backup plan, shifting the disruptor frequencies in a predetermined pattern that prevented the Tralaxians from developing countermeasures. It was a technical ballet performed across thousands of facilities simultaneously, requiring precise coordination through the resistance network aboard the Tralaxian command ship. Kelly Martinez and her crewmate made their way through corridors filled with disoriented aliens. The disruptor effect was weaker here, allowing the Tralaxians limited function, but still sufficient to give the humans an advantage. Command center should be this way, Kelly whispered. Following the ship's schematic Zexthal had provided to the resistance, they reached the bridge to find Grand Marshal Vexcon and his senior officers struggling to maintain control of their forces. The Tralaxian leader recognized the humans immediately, his compound eyes flashing with rage despite the disruptor's effects. You, he managed to say through the neural interference. Impossible. Not impossible, Kelly replied, raising the portable disruptor device she carried. Inevitable. She activated the device, flooding the command center with a concentrated dose of the disruptor frequency. Vexcon and his officers collapsed, their neural systems overloaded by the direct exposure. With the command ship under their control, Kelly accessed the fleet's emergency communication system. Using codes provided by Zexthal, she broadcast a direct message to all Tralaxian vessels. Your command structure has fallen. Earth is no longer yours to take. Stand down or face destruction. On screens throughout the ship, she could see the effect of her message. Tralaxian vessels began powering down weapon systems. Ground forces ceased offensive operations. Without central command and suffering under the disruptor effect, individual Tralaxian units chose survival over continued conflict. 6 hours after Operation Turning Point began, the first Tralaxian surrender was reported in occupied Berlin. Others followed rapidly. By nightfall, resistance leaders confirmed major alien withdrawals from cities worldwide. In the Colorado facility, Commander Bennett received the reports with cautious optimism. They're retreating, but they're not defeated, he warned. We need to maintain the disruptor network at full strength until we secure formal surrender terms. Dr. Russo nodded in agreement. The network can run indefinitely now. We've established backup systems at all major nodes. For the first time in months, humans around the world dared to hope. The tide had turned. Operation Turning Point had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. The species that the Tralaxians had dismissed as primitive had demonstrated a capacity for adaptation and coordination that the invaders had never encountered before. 1 week after Operation Turning Point, the Tralaxian Empire formally requested peace negotiations. The message came directly from the Tralaxian High Command, bypassing Grand Marshal Vexcon, who had been relieved of his position following the failure of the Earth invasion. In his place, Subcommander Zilvax was appointed to handle the surrender terms. Unlike his predecessor, Zilvax approached the humans with a measure of respect born from their unexpected victory. We underestimated your species, he admitted during the initial communication, a mistake we will not repeat. The peace negotiations were set to take place in neutral Switzerland, at a facility hastily prepared for the historic meeting. Security was paramount. The disruptor network remained at full strength during the talks. A constant reminder of humanity's newfound leverage, diplomat Alan Carter led the human delegation, which included military representatives from major nations, scientists who had developed the disruptor technology, and Zexthel, whose knowledge had been crucial to the resistance. Dr. Samantha Russo and Peter Johnson attended as technical advisors, ready to explain the disruptor capabilities, if needed. Our position is simple, Carter told the assembled representatives before the Tralaxians arrived. Complete withdrawal from Earth and the solar system. A non-aggression pact that protects not just us, but any world that wishes to remain independent of Tralaxian control. When the Tralaxian delegation entered, led by Zilvax, the tension in the room was palpable. These were the beings who had brought Earth to the brink of subjugation. Now they sat across the table as defeated invaders, their once proud posture diminished by the humiliation of failure. The negotiations lasted 3 days. The Tralaxians, while forced to accept withdrawal, tried to maintain access to Earth's resources. They offered technological exchanges, promises of protection from other spacefaring species, and guarantees of limited presence. The human delegation refused every compromise. You came as conquerors, Carter reminded them. You leave on our terms, not yours. Finally, the Tralaxians conceded. The Treaty of Geneva established a demilitarized zone extending throughout the solar system. Tralaxian vessels would withdraw beyond Pluto's orbit and remain there. Earth would gain access to specific Tralaxian technologies as reparations, while maintaining the disruptor network as a deterrent against future aggression. A monitoring system would be established, with observatories placed throughout the solar system to detect any unauthorized Tralaxian presence. Kelly Martinez, recognized for her role in capturing the Tralaxian command ship, was appointed to lead this new space monitoring agency. As the Tralaxian fleet began its withdrawal from Earth orbit, celebrations erupted worldwide. Cities emerged from occupation, rebuilding efforts began, and a new sense of global unity emerged from the shared experience of resistance. In Montana, where the journey began, Diane Powell and Zexthel became key figures in establishing diplomatic relations with other galactic civilizations. Zexthel revealed that several species had suffered under Tralaxian expansion, many still fighting their own resistance battles. Earth's victory gave them new hope and a potential ally. My world was conquered 3 generations ago, Zexthel explained during a United Nations address. Others have been under Tralaxian control for centuries. You have shown them that liberation is possible, that technological superiority can be overcome with adaptation and cooperation. The implications were profound. Earth was no longer alone in the universe, no longer at the bottom of the technological hierarchy. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing against a vastly superior force, and emerging victorious. Dr. Russo was appointed to lead the newly formed International Space Technology Integration Committee, tasked with adapting Tralaxian technology for human benefit. The reparations included medical knowledge, energy systems, and transportation technologies that would accelerate human development by centuries. We need to be careful, she cautioned during the committee's first meeting. Rapid technological advancement without ethical consideration led the Tralaxians to become conquerors. We must choose a different path. The committee established strict protocols for technology integration, prioritizing developments that would heal the environmental damage caused by both human activity and the Tralaxian invasion. Clean energy systems based on alien principles replaced fossil fuels within 2 years. Medical advances eliminated several major diseases within 3. Commander Bennett oversaw the restructuring of Earth's military forces into a unified space defense initiative. The lessons of the resistance, coordination, adaptation, unconventional tactics became the foundation of this new approach to planetary security. The disruptor network was maintained and enhanced, ready to activate if any threat appeared. We're not looking for new conflicts, Bennett told the graduates of the first Space Defense Academy class. But we will never again be caught unprepared. Frank Miller returned to NASA, now expanded into the Global Space Agency, where he led research into Relaxian communication systems. His work revealed that the galaxy contained thousands of civilizations, many with technological levels similar to Earth's. Some had already reached out, curious about the species that had defeated the Tralaxian Empire. In Chicago, Olivia Wright helped transform the former work camps into memorial parks, honoring those who had died during the occupation. Her experience leading resistance cells translated to community leadership as the city rebuilt. Similar stories played out around the world as ordinary people who had risen to extraordinary challenges during the crisis found new purpose in the peace that followed. 5 years after the war ended, humanity had advanced technologically at an unprecedented rate. The first human-built interstellar vessel was ready for its maiden voyage. A ship designed using principles learned from Tralaxian technology, but distinctly human in its approach, named Unity. The vessel incorporated elements from cultures around the world. Its mission was exploration rather than conquest, a deliberate contrast to the Tralaxian philosophy. Captain Jack Wilson was appointed to command the ship, with Kelly Martinez joining as Chief Science Officer after years overseeing the Solar System Monitoring Network. "Our journey begins today," Wilson told his crew as they prepared for departure. Not just to distant stars, but toward a new understanding of our place in the universe. As Unity left Earth orbit, it carried a message to the galaxy. Humanity had arrived on the interstellar stage not as conquerors or victims, but as survivors who had earned their place through ingenuity and cooperation. In the Tralaxian Empire, the defeat at Earth led to unexpected changes. Zilvax, influenced by the human example, implemented reforms that shifted imperial policy away from conquest toward trade and diplomacy. The cost of the Earth campaign, both in resources and prestige, had forced a reassessment of expansion strategies. Other species, inspired by Earth's resistance, began their own movements against Tralaxian control. Some succeeded, others failed, but the Empire's aura of invincibility was permanently broken. The galaxy entered a period of realignment as power balances shifted away from pure military dominance toward more complex relationships. At the United Nations now expanded into the preliminary framework for a galactic council. Diplomat Alan Carter addressed representatives from Earth and several newly contacted civilizations. "We came to the stars late," he told them, "but we arrived prepared. The lesson of our victory is not that we are superior, but that diversity of approach, cooperation across differences, and adaptation to challenges are strengths, not weaknesses." The message spread throughout known space. Earth was not to be trifled with. The species that had defeated the Tralaxian Empire had done so not through superior firepower or numbers, but through the uniquely human capacity to turn disadvantage into opportunity. As Unity disappeared into the depths of space, beginning humanity's first journey to another star system, the people of Earth looked to the future with new confidence. They had faced the greatest threat in their history and emerged stronger, more united and ready to take their place among the stars, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals worthy of respect. The war was over. The journey was just beginning.